Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Kristen. This is my booktube. And in this week's video, we are going to be talking about my October TBR. I know, it's been a really long time since I've actually done a TBR video, but we're gonna get back on it this month and talk about some of the books that I wanna read during spooky season. I've been on a bit of a break from the thrillers, which is kind of a good thing because those are the kind of books that I tend to like to read around Halloween. You know, they have that creepy vibe. They are a little bit scary, really like adrenaline inducing, heart pumping, and they're just more fitting for the spooky season. So kind of works out that I took a little bit of a break from those in the past couple months so I can dive back in the month of October, truly the end of September, and get back into it just in time to roll in the spooky season and really go all in. Little fact about me, I love October. I love fall or autumn if you're not American. My birthday's in October. One of our dog's birthdays is in October. It's starting to cool down outside. If it hasn't already been made pretty clear, I have a bit of a spooky vibe myself. I wear a lot of black. I'm really into like witchy, spooky aesthetic. I love Halloween decor. I love everything about October. It is one of my favorite months, if not my favorite month of the year. I am very excited for this month and I have some very exciting reads on my TBR as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into what is on my October TBR. So if you've been with me for a while, you know that the TBRs that I set out are kind of like guidelines, I guess you could say. It's more of books that I would like to read in October, and whether I read all of them or veer off of the list depends on my mood. I'm not really that strict in planning what I'm reading, mostly because I want to make sure that I am enjoying what I'm reading. And if I have a long TBR and I am trying to hit all of the books on the TBR, then it starts to feel a little bit more like a school assignment or something, like assigned readings. So even though this is a pretty long TBR for the month of October, I may veer off of this list. I may read some short stories, I may sprinkle in some other stuff. It just depends on how I'm feeling throughout the month. But as of right now, on Wednesday, September 27th, this list kind of encapsulates the vibe that I want my readings in October to have. And you will notice that there are some repeat books from TBRs past, and there are also some rereads on here for me, so there's a bit of a mix as well. So the first book on my TBR is a book that I have already started. I started it a couple days ago while I was gem painting. I mentioned in a previous video that I have taken up the artsy craft of gem painting. So this is one of the books that I have been listening to while I've been doing my gem painting. And I think a little over halfway done with it at this point. And that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So if you're unfamiliar, this is a Hunger Games prequel. I started this book a couple days ago as I've been gem painting, one of my newly picked up crafty, relaxing activities that I do in the evening time. And I'm about halfway done with it as of right now. And if you are not familiar with The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, this is a Hunger Games prequel, and there is a movie set to come out in November based on this book. When the first Hunger Games movie came out in like 2011, 2012, something like that. Whenever the first Hunger Games movie came out, I was deep in the Hunger Games rabbit hole. I was a Tumblr girl at the time, so I was in that fandom, reblogging, reposting all of the Hunger Games things. I was that girl. And I read all 3 books in very quick succession. I absolutely loved the books. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not entirely sure if I've seen all of the movies. I know that I've seen Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay Part 2, but to this day, I honestly cannot tell you if I've ever seen Mockingjay Part 1, because I remember when I saw Mockingjay Part 2 in theaters, I remember my thought process being, well, I read the book, so even though I haven't seen Part 1, I should know what's going on in Part 2. And I did, but I just don't know if I ever went back and watched Mockingjay Part 1. So the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes really centers around President Snow as a, not child, but like a young adult. He's like, I think he's like 18 or so. He is a young adult and he is picked to be a mentor in the 10th Hunger Games. It is the first game that they've had mentors in, and there are a lot of pivotal changes that are made to the games in this book that I can already see the ramifications leading into the first Hunger Games book. So it's very interesting as someone who was very into the whole Hunger Games franchise when it first got really popular, to be able to get a little more background on President Snow and also of Pan Am as a whole, a little bit more about the districts, like District 13. We get to know a bit more about how the districts interact economically, and we also get more points of view from the capital and a bit more about the war that started the Hunger Games in the first place. And I'm sure there's more to come. Like I said, I'm not finished with the book yet, so I'm sure there's going to be more of those interesting context points that will resonate in the other books as well. So that is the first book on my list. And because I am reading the prequel, I'm also planning on doing a reread of the Hunger Games trilogy as well after I finish the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So it has been over 10 years since I have read the original trilogy. So I made the decision to read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes first. Even though it's been 10 years since I've read the original trilogy, I do have a decent memory of the things that happen in the books. It's not as fresh in my mind as it would be if I had just read them. But I do have enough of a knowledge of what went on in the original trilogy to be able to tie some things back to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I thought it would be interesting to wait to do a reread until I've read the prequel so that I can have those like memories of the things that I remember reading when I first read through the trilogy. And then I can go back into my reread with the prequel in mind. And I'm thinking it will kind of give it like a really interesting point of view to read from. I don't know if that logic makes sense to anyone but me, but that is my thought process. I would also like to do a similar thing that I did when I reread the Harry Potter series and watch each movie after I have finished the corresponding book so that I can kind of see the changes that were made for the screen adaptation and have the books more fresh in my mind than they were when I watched the movies initially. Because similar to Harry Potter, I read all 3 books in very quick succession, and then the movies came out like years apart. So by the time I saw the movies, the book wasn't as fresh in my mind. And I think it would be interesting to watch the movies alongside of reading the books. So that's my plan for the Hunger Games series. And I may end up doing some sort of reading vlog around it. I'm not entirely sure. But the only book in the series that I finished the book and then immediately watched the movie was the very first book, because if I'm remembering correctly, I finished the first book, texted my friend, and then we went and saw the movie in theaters right after. So that's the only one that I even did something remotely close to that with, and I think it would be fun to do that with these as well. So far, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is very interesting. It's giving a lot of context to the Hunger Games as a whole, and I think that once I get to my reread of the trilogy, there will be a lot of blanks filled in, and it will make the reading experience for those even more interesting. With just that, I've covered 4 books that are on my TBR. And since those are more like young adult books, I should be able to get through them fairly quickly. They're not that long or anything like that, and I've read them before. So I am very much looking forward to rereading those. I may end up doing some sort of reading vlog surrounding my reread of the trilogy and then also rewatching the movies. Might do that, might give you some of my thoughts. If that's something you're interested in, leave a comment down below or leave a like, let me know, because I'm gonna be doing it anyway, so I may as well vlog it a little bit. The next book on my list for October is A Flicker in the Dark. So this is my workbook club's pick for the month of October. It is a thriller, and I don't really know much about it, but I have seen the book around and I already have it saved, and since it's the book club pick of the month, that is pretty much why it has made it onto my TBR. Then also in the thriller vein, I have We're All Lying. This is one that I found on Scribd, just kind of poking around, and it looked interesting. It has the spooky vibe that I want for October, so it has made it onto the TBR for the month of October. Then when I was organizing my bookshelf, I found a book that I forgot that I bought, which is The Inheritance Games. And I've heard quite a bit about The Inheritance Games. It is the first book in a series. It's also in that young adult kind of vein, but the concept sounds really interesting. If I'm remembering correct, I believe the story centers around a girl who is left a large fortune by this wealthy person that I believe she doesn't know him, that she has left all of this money, but in order to claim it, she has to stay in a mansion with the family that he has that did not get the inheritance. So she basically has to live with the people who are actually related to this person, who believe that they should have gotten this money. And it seems like this is a pretty bloodthirsty family, like willing to do anything for money. So I'm anticipating there's going to be a lot of mortal danger and some people dying in this book. Though it is young adult, so it may not be like that intense, but that's the preconceived notion that I have going in. And I've heard good things about it. I've seen the book around on like Book Talk and stuff. And then it was on sale at Barnes & Noble a couple months ago, so I ended up buying it. And I totally forgot that I even own it. So I found it on my bookshelf, added it to my TBR. The next book that I have on my list is called Murder in the Family. And this is another one that I saw on TikTok. One of my friends sent it to me. And this one really caught my eye because it is a thriller that is set up differently than pretty much any other thriller that I have read recently. The way that it was described to me was that you are trying to figure out and solve the murder in this book before the characters do. And I'll put some pictures up here, but there are like case files in the book. There are different documents and like fingerprints, maybe even some crime scene photos, but there's like evidence printed inside of the book. And your goal is to try to solve the murder before the characters in the book do. And it just seemed like such a fun concept. It hasn't even come out yet, I don't think, but I do want to go buy the physical book and read that in October. I think that that will fit in perfectly with the spooky vibe that I want. And it's a new release. As far as the actual like plot of the story and the characters and things like that, I don't know too much about it. Just the overall concept of the book just drew me in so much that I really want to read this book. And so at some point in the near future, I'm gonna have to go to a Barnes & Noble or somewhere of the like and track it down so that I can read it in October. The next book on my list is The Intern. This is a book of the month book that I have, and I did start reading it a little bit in September, but I only got like 10 or so pages in and have not really picked it up since then. So in order to make a little bit more progress on the physical books that I'm reading this year, I do want to make some time in October to sit down and do some more reading of the physical books that I have. So I thought The Intern was a good place to start since I've already dipped my toes in a little bit. What I know about this book is that the story centers around a law student at Harvard Law. She's in her second year, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but she is a Harvard Law student nonetheless. She has this law professor that is also a judge that she pretty much idolizes, and she takes a class with this professor, and after class one day, she makes a good impression on this judge, and the judge encourages her to apply for a coveted internship to work as their legal aid, essentially. And at the same time, this character also has a younger brother who is in trouble with the law. He has been arrested on federal drug charges, and she thinks that he is being framed and being forced to plead guilty to something that he did not do. So that is pretty much all I know from the first 10 pages, pretty much all I understand. And it seems like it's going to be a tense legal thriller, which is interesting. I haven't really read many legal thrillers specifically, so this seems like it'll be an interesting twist on the thriller genre. You know, it's not really like a detective trying to solve a murder. It's more about an intern who is trying to take on a corrupt system from the inside. At least that's the vibe I get from the synopsis and what I've read so far. All right, and the last book on my list is another physical book that I started a few months ago, and I still have not finished it because I just haven't been sitting down to really physically read any books in the last couple months, and that is What Lies in the Woods. This one, I believe I'm about 120-ish pages into, probably a little over a third of the way through the book, and unlike The Intern, this thriller does center around the victim of an attack and the aftermath of her attempted murder. The story is about a girl named Naomi who liked to hang out in the woods with two of her friends as a child. And when she's about 11, her and her friends are playing in the woods as they normally do, and she is brutally attacked and stabbed several times by someone in the woods. As eyewitnesses convict the man that they think is responsible. The bulk of the story takes place about 20 years later when the perpetrator passes away in prison, and it kind of reopens the whole case, reopens wounds for Naomi, and she begins to question whether the man that they put in prison is actually the one that attacked her that night. Because not only was he convicted of attempting to murder her, but he was also convicted of a series of murders that had been unsolved up to that point. So throughout the story, we're kind of following Naomi around as she tries to sort through what really happened that night in the woods, and if what she thinks happened is actually what really happened. So the point that I'm at now, things are starting to click together a little bit. She's starting to make a little headway, and there is still a lot to uncover. So I don't fully know what's going on right now, if I'm being completely honest. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding the night that she was attacked in the woods, and she keeps saying things like, I can't let anyone find out what secrets I have buried in the woods. So, you know, we don't know if that's like something physically buried in the woods, or if it's like metaphorically the things that are buried in the woods, you know, like kid shenanigans, that kind of thing. I don't even remember why I put this book down. It's not like boring or anything like that. It's actually pretty interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting to actually finish that book and find out what lies in the woods. So yeah, that is my lengthy October TBR. There are 10 books on my TBR that I just counted up, so it is a pretty lengthy TBR, but I think that I should be able to get through all of those books, especially since like about half of them are considered young adult books, so theoretically there should be a little shorter, a little easier to read, that kind of thing. And I should be able to get through them a bit more quickly. But yeah, that is the end of my spooky season TBR. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe while you're down there. I put out new videos every single Saturday around noon Central Standard Time. Be sure to join me again next week, where I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in September, and that is also quite a lengthy list. I think I'm at about 9 books right now that I've finished in September, and I have like 2 or 3 more that I'm in the process of reading. So we should have plenty of books to go through in my September wrap up next week. So look forward to seeing that. I read some pretty good books this month, so I'm excited to share those with you. If you have any other spooky season recommendations, go ahead and leave a comment down below and tell me what they are. I love a good spooky book. The spookier the better, honestly. If it can give me chills, if it can freak me out and make me not want to sleep at night, that is my kind of thriller. And actually a qualifying factor for any thrillers that I rate 5 stars. If they don't give me chills, they don't get 5 stars. So I would love to hear your recommendations as well. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!